Okay, so step one when it comes to doing a transaction, you kind of have three big steps I always like to say to kind of help you remember. It's add a contact, start the opportunity, and then start the transaction. So I'm just going to go into my contacts. If they're already in there, you of course can skip this step, but we'll go like I need to create one. So up here in the top right, you have add contact. You need to have at least a name and an email, bare minimum, so you can send a document. Whatever other information you have about them, that's great. Today, I don't know if I have a Kevin. We'll do a Kevin buyer. That email doesn't exist. So I'm not going to put in a phone number, lead source, any of that. But if you have it, go ahead and add it. If you want to add more information, you can add in their address. It's good to have as much information about them in your contact card. It just makes your life a little bit easier. But I'm going to create him. Where this gets a little bit different if you are an individual versus if you're on a team. So if you're an individual, it kind of ends there. You can just add the contact and you're good to go. If you're on a team, most teams have it set up to where you can only create an opportunity in the team pipeline. So that means that the agent doesn't have access to their own pipeline. If that is the case, what I would do after you add them in, or if they're already in here, you just need to search their name, find them in your database. You're going to check them and then select bulk action. And then if you drop down, you'll have change account. So if I click that, I only have one account. I don't have a team account set up on here, but it'll give you an option to change them to the team account. So just select that and hit change account, and then you will be good to go. A good indicator of when you need to do that is when you go to create the opportunity and the client doesn't pop up in your, when you're creating the opportunity. I'll show you that. If their name does not pop up, they're probably not shared and you need to go in and do this. But since if you're not on a team or you're an individual, you can just add them in. You don't have to worry about that. So that's step one. We added my contact. Step two, we're going to go into the opportunities applet. So the shaking hands, if you ever need to know what these are, you can hover over them, hit the red KW, and they will expand. Opportunities are where all of your transactions take place. So this is where all of the final documents for your transactions will be uploaded. So a few things you have in here, you have a listing pipeline and you have a buyer pipeline. Within the different stages, you can see kind of what all's going on. If you scroll down, you can see your ratio, listings, buyers, your activity. You can see what month you are the most active. And if you have anything that's coming up for closing, it'll be down here. So really you can get lost in this applet because there's so much information in this one place. Over here, we have our GCI calculators. So you have one for each pipeline. These are kind of cool because you have your potential income versus your probable income. Potential income being if every single one of these opportunities were to close, that is how much money you would make, kind of just based on whatever information you've input about the transaction. Real estate doesn't really work that way. So that's why you have a probable income. So this adjusts the commission based on each stage's probability to close. That is something you can edit. So you do have this settings option up here. Oh, not that, sorry. You can go into each stage. And then up here, so you have edit stages. So that will show you right now I'm in my active stage. So these are a little bit more likely to close. But if I come into like my cultivate and go into edit stages, things that are just like watch, nurture, hot, those are a lot less likely weighted when it comes to your probable income. If you ever want to change any of these, you can just hit edit stages. I've seen some people instead of, cultivate, watch, nurture, hot. If they don't really know what that means or that doesn't work for you, you can change it to something I see a lot is like more than 12 months from closing, 3 to 6 months from closing, 0 to 3 months from, from expected listing, things like that. Change it to whatever works for you. If this is fine and you don't really want to bother with that, just leave it as is. But you do have different stages for each little, I don't want to say these are your stages. I guess these are also your stages, but you can see what all you have in here. But to create the opportunity, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to hit create. So depending on what information you have to input, Market Center, I'm only in the Fayetteville Market Center. If you're in more than one, you'll have to choose that. If you're on a team, like I was talking about, if they have it to where you can't have a personal pipeline, it should automatically show up as the team name there. The first one you really need to pay attention to is this opportunity type. So listing versus buyer, you cannot change this once you create the opportunity. It does make a difference. So make sure that you create the correct one the first time, otherwise you will have to redo it. I think I'm doing a buyer opportunity. Owner really only matters if you're on a team. Client, so if I type in, I have Kevin Buyer. So he would not have popped up if he was not already in my contact database. So that's why that step is really important. Co-buyer, so if he had a wife or somebody else he was buying this property with, you could put them in there. Opportunity name, I'm just going to leave it as is. Most of the time when you have a buyer, you don't know what the address is that they're purchasing. It's good practice if you know the address. If it's a listing, go ahead and name it as the address. It just makes it easier for us. Custom tags, this is up to you. If you want to tag this like referral or past client, that would be some good things to put in there. Estimated close date, time frame, budget, that's all kind of optional. If you have that information, it's good to put it in. If not, you can leave it blank. Commission rate for your side. So you can change this eventually. So I would just put in the usual 3% if you need to get past that stage. And then your phase, cultivate, appointment, and active are really the only ones you can start out with. If you're a little late to the game, which I'm not going to get into that, but you can always just create it and then move it to another stage if you need to. I'm just going to put it in as cultivate and watch, and I'm going to hit create. And that is step 2 of our 3-step little how to get everything to link seamlessly. So I just created my opportunity. That's where it has taken me. So the 2 main tabs you really want to focus on initially are this details tab and the documents tab. Within the details tab, this will communicate with Docusign as long as your room is linked. So whatever information you have, if you know the property, go ahead and put it in there. If not, especially buyer, you're not going to have that much information. So just put in what you have. You can always go back and use these edit buttons and change it and add all of this missing information. I'm going to go into the documents tab, and a lot of agents get stuck here initially. So it tells you exactly what to do. To start work with opportunity, please select checklist type first. What that is referencing is this pick checklist type. So if I drop that down, you have 3 options. So residential, referral for which we will receive payment, or expansion. Most of the time you're going to choose residential. Referral is only if, this is if you sent out a referral and you're just keeping track of the paperwork and you're expecting to receive a referral check from an outside agent. We don't require that for compliance. So this is really just if you want to keep up with that. Expansion, if that doesn't apply to you, then you won't use it basically. But I'm going to choose residential, and that is going to pop up my checklists. So it's important to note, since I chose a buyer opportunity, my consultation folder is blank because nothing in the consultation stage is required for compliance. If I would have done this as a listing, I would have a listing contract and I would have an entire different check sheet for that. That's why it does matter what kind of opportunity you choose, listing versus buyer, because you'll be missing an entire folder of document placeholders basically. But if you see this and it is blank, that is okay. Just switch to the under contract tab and you will see all of the documents that are marked as required, optional, conditional. If it is conditional, it'll usually give you a reason. So you can see what all you need for compliance purposes. You can also click on any of these underlined links you can click on. So buyer under contract forms and Docusign order. If you want to click that, open it up, print it out, you can use this as a check sheet. If you're a hard paper type of person and you need kind of like a reference list, this is something you can use just to make sure you're covering all of your forms. You also have a how to get paid command that will come into play when all of your documents are uploaded. And then these underlined forms are usually our KW disclosures. So we uploaded these mostly for people who use Dotloop and didn't have access to these. These are all in Docusign. So if you're using Docusign, you don't have to worry about that. And really just, play around with this. So anything underlined is a live link. You can open it. It'll be a document. If you need to print it or download it, you have those options up here. Your third step, and when it comes time to actually link your room to your opportunity, you have the Start a Transaction button right here. So mine is different because I have both a Dotloop account and a Docusign account set up. If you come into your settings, if it looks a little bit different if you don't have Start a Transaction, your very first one should be Docusign, and you want it to look like this. You want it to say connected, have your account information, and give you the option to disconnect account. If it is not yet connected and you cannot get it to connect, come see me, email me, and we will get it figured out. So I have both a Docusign account and a Dotloop account connected. You don't need both. You really just need to pick which one you're going to go with. Docusign is, of course, what Keller Williams provides, so you will get an account set up for free. Going back into my opportunity, kind of an easy way to find opportunities. If this, you created one and you have no idea what folder it's in, you can come into all opportunities and you can search by contact name. And it makes it a little bit easier to find. So I can just open up my Kevin Buyer and I'm in there. So I am going to hit Start a Transaction. If you only have one account, it'll automatically go to Docusign, but I have to choose. So when I choose Docusign, it's going to open it up in a separate tab. If you're using Safari or if you're using this on a template and it doesn't open, check your pop-up blockers. That's usually the issue. Going back into my opportunity, now you can see where it has Sync Transaction and Go to Transaction. So now, since I've created the room, I can hit Go to Transaction and it'll take me directly to that room. Sync Transaction is if you input information into this Details tab or you do something to this room and you need the two to communicate together, hit Sync Transaction and they'll kind of talk back and forth and they'll make the updates needed. Going back into my room, you will have a room for each, I don't want to say transaction because if it is a buyer, you don't need a separate room for each transaction, but kind of think of it like that. Maybe for each person that you do and each separate transaction that they actually make it to the end, you will have a room for. It automatically takes you into the Documents tab, but I always recommend come into this Details tab. Fill out as much information as you have initially, even if that's just the address, because whatever you put in this Details tab is going to automatically put itself onto your forms. So it is going to save you some time. So since mine's a buyer, if I scroll all the way down, I have my buyer name and my buyer email because that's all I put into command. So it has already put that in there for me. I didn't input a buyer to. If you get to this stage and you do have one, just add it in. And then I have my buyer agent information because that's what it put myself in as. All of this also coming from command. So you have this edit button up here. Click on that and then just go, whatever you have, put it in here. It does make a difference. So for my address, I always just use the office address because I'm not creative enough to come up with another address. I don't even know what that is. So there we go. We have the address. And then once you're done, you can just hit save. So now, once you filled out your Details tab, we're going to come back into that Documents tab. And to get your forms into the room, we're going to hit Add. And then you're going to choose Docusign Forms. So they have changed this recently. I've heard mixed reviews. I'm kidding. I've only really heard one person's review and she did not like it very much. But you have your groups over here. And you also have your libraries. So depending on how you want to look for forms, if I want to look for just our forms, or if I want to get like a Gen X form really quickly, it might be a little bit easier to choose from the library. If not, since I put this one in as a buyer opportunity, I can choose all buyer forms and placeholders. It's going to pop up everything I might possibly need for a buyer transaction. I do have control over these folders, so if you think that a form is missing or there's something that doesn't need to be in there, just let me know. I can add things. As long as we have it in our library, I can add it in fairly quickly. So I'm going to pull in just to working with real estate agents buyers. Oh, that is new. Okay, there's two. Okay, reminder, I don't do real estate. I don't do the forms. So if I'm choosing the wrong one, sorry. If you need any form help, definitely ask either Trisha or Shauna. They can definitely guide you the right way. And I will pull in the buyer agency agreement just so I have two forms to work with. So whatever forms you want to do, just hit a check mark, and then we are going to add selected. So that brings in my two forms. What you do at this stage, whatever you've brought in and you want to send for signing, you are going to click on. And you are going to start at the top. You are going to fill this out in its entirety because this is what you're going to send for signing. So this is the stage where you actually fill everything out. So we'll say that is all filled out. And you'll see all of this at the bottom. That's where things from my details came from. So it does make a difference. It's just, you know, one last time that you have to put in your buyer's name and your email name. That saves you time. I am going to save and close. Then I would go on to my next form since I brought in two. And then same with this, just go through. This one doesn't really have anything to fill out, but if you were using the old one, it had fields to fill out. You just fill it out, same thing, save and close. So this is definitely the time consuming part. This is the part where you're going to have a lot of questions probably if you're not familiar with these forms. Shauna, Trisha, any of our ALC, they can help you fill these out if you have any questions. Once everything that you want sent for signing is filled out, you'll see if I hover over, I'll get a little circle at the top left that will allow me to check it. I'm going to check whatever I want to send in the same envelope. So we can send both of these together. You can send as many forms as you want in one. It's kind of just up to you. And then once I choose items, it gives me a toolbar. So the pen is the create envelope. It used to say Docusign if you hovered over it. They changed it to create envelope, I guess, just to make it a little more clear as to what it actually does. When I click on that, it is going to pull me into the envelope. So you can name it. I usually just name it something that tells me what is in there, just to make it a little bit easier. These are my two forms. If you need to pull something else in from the room that you forgot, you can do it hitting room docs. It does already have to be added to your room and filled out though. Add recipients to the envelope. So this is where I kind of lose a lot of people. So if you want to make your life really easy, you're going to always, if you're using the Docusign forms, you want to use the pre-tagged roles. When I choose that, it lets me assign who all I have in this transaction. So I have a buyer one and I have a buyer agent. And choose. I'm going to add selected. So that is going to tell Docusign who I have and who they are. So it is going to automatically assign the fields and the signatures to them. Otherwise, if you just did the room participants, you would have to hand add in every single signing field, which can take up a lot of time. Something I always recommend, but it's totally up to you. You have these numbers on the top left. I always recommend if you have to sign it, make yourself signer one. What that means is that you have to actually sign this in its entirety before your buyer even knows it exists. So if I leave these both as everybody signs as one, it's going to go to both of us at the same time. But if I change it, I have to sign this. If you miss, you realize that you missed something, it's a little bit easier to kind of stop it than it is to go back and have them re-sign it just because you have to fix it. So this is a good kind of just insurance policy. You have one added chance to go over it before it actually goes to your client. And then, depending on who all you have, you can set like yourself as one. If you have 4 buyers, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. If they ever say like, hey, I'm still waiting on that document, you're always going to have to wait on the next person in line. So kind of just think about that. But it's always a good idea to just set yourself as number 1 and whoever else is signing as number 2, just to, cover your butt if need be.
Shelby, can I ask a question, please?
Okay.
Good morning. This is Dave Pickford. How are you?
David.
When you do the pre-tagged roles on the forms like the residential disclosure form, does that also go in and add all of the boxes on each one of the lines? So I understand that the pre-tag roles will put their initials and their signatures in, but Shauna showed me one time where you can add those boxes into like the residential disclosure.
It does, but it adds every single one. So in something like that, it might be better to add the individual boxes that that they're going to choose.
So what I'm saying is if you use pre-tag roles, it adds a box in every single one and gives them the option to go pick whatever they want at that point.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So your message to all recipients. This is what your clients are going to actually see. So the email subject and the email message. So whatever greeting you want to give to them, that will go in here. Once I hit next, this is the stage where you get to see where the signatures are and where the initials are. So, and if there are any check boxes, you'll see that. So you'll see that these aren't checked. That's because those are for you to do in the filling out stage. So that's not something that your client would need to select. You'll see I have a buyer initial and I have agent initial. We are all color coded. So right now the buyer's agent is yellow and my buyer is blue. So you can choose if you need to add in any additional signature or initials, just make sure you're on the right color and you can bring those in. As long as you're using the pre-tagged roles, this stage is really to just go over your forms, make sure everything's filled out, make sure that everywhere that has an initial needs an initial. And something I always like to point out on forms like this. So you'll see that these are solid color blue, which means they are required. They cannot go to the next, they basically can't save the document fully without initialing that. The ones with the colored outline mean they are optional. So this is where they get to choose if they want like dual agency, whatever the other one is. I would have this conversation ahead of time and already have that decided and delete out, whatever option they're not doing. You can click on these and just mark it as a required field, because what's going to happen when they go to sign, if they're marked as optional, they're just going to be going through, they're going to initial, and the screen is going to blow right past those because they're marked as optional and they're going to initial, and then you're going to get back an incomplete document. So if you mark those as required, it kind of saves that step of having to go back and have them select one. Okay, we'll see. So signed, date signed. Okay, so we'll say at this point, everything is good. You have an initial for everything that you need. You have a signature. There's no optional fields kind of lingering around. What we're going to do to actually send it off for signing is hit this send button. You have one down here and you have one up here. You also have a preview button if that's something that you want to see. The cool thing with the preview, you can see it as both yourself and you can see what your buyer sees. So I had those that were marked as optional. So you'll see that that one's optional. So it doesn't like force them to sign it because obviously it's optional. So I'm going to hit send just because I'm number one. If I picked a random email that, does exist, they won't ever get it. But if I click on this, you can see kind of the status of it. So you can see the buyer agent still needs to sign. It's currently waiting on them. Buyer one is queued up. So as soon as this person signs, they will get the document and they also need to sign it. If you need to correct it, you have a correct button right here. This will take you back into the envelope stage and you can fix whatever you need to. Go back. No. So you also have more. So if you need to view documents, copy, void, view the history, you can do that. You can resend it if for some reason they didn't get it. So you do have some options in here. If I come back into my documents, what's going to happen when everything is fully signed, you will basically have duplicates of these. So there'll be one right here, one right there. You'll usually also get a certificate of signing. It's something that Docusign does just to verify the signatures. But your two, they will no longer be forms. So it's not something that you can click on and change the fields ever again. You can mark through and make changes like that if you need to. But it will have the same name and it will say signed. So it'll be exclusive buyer agency agreement, all of those numbers signed. And instead of a form, it will have a check mark and it'll be green and it will say signed. So what we do now, as things come in and they start getting signed, we come back over into our opportunity. So I'm going to go back into my under contract folder because that's where those documents are going to go. So I have a buyer agency agreement and a working with real estate agents. You're going to look for the placeholder that you have. There's two ways to add. So working with real estate agents, I could hit add a file. Since this room is correctly linked to this opportunity, I can choose to pull it directly from Docusign, just meaning you don't have to download it onto your computer and save it that way. Oh, I don't have any documents. Okay. I'm thinking that they made it so you can only upload signed documents. It used to be that you could upload the blank documents, but I think they've changed that. Well, that's good for you guys so you don't upload the wrong one. But you will add a file, pull from Docusign. I guess all of your signed documents will show up. It'll be a check mark, so you can just select and then hit assign, and then they will upload themselves immediately in here. So you don't have to download. Let me just download this one so I have something to actually upload into my room. We're waiting. I guess I could have picked a smaller document. So if I hit assign, so it'll show up in blue text. You do have the option to open it up and you can look at it. So at this point, things are going to start getting uploaded. You have 48 hours after you have a fully executed contract to send this to us. So once you have, we don't need to see you're working with real estate agents and you're right to represent buyer if you're writing 17 offers and waiting for one to get accepted. Until you're under contract, you don't have to submit this to us. But once you upload a fully executed offer, you have 48 hours. That is the commission rule. It's not just us being crazy. So once you have a contract uploaded, you will hit submit to Market Center. At that point, Trisha will start going through compliance. And obviously, at that point, you're not going to have every single document needed. She knows that, but we do need to have that contract. So you will hit submit. You'll see we're now in open status because I uploaded that document. It'll change to submitted status. What happens then, the same day you submit to Market Center, you're going to come over into this offers and commissions tab. And you're going to add an offer and then fill out your commissions tab. So let me see if I can get through this. You can manually enter it. If you want to pull it from the MLS, you can hit select from KWLS. Just make sure it's on all listings. if it's not yours. And then you can search by address up here. So that might be a little bit easier. This is through Google Maps, so it can get a little finicky sometimes. If that's the case and you can't pull it up and you know for sure it was in the MLS, I would recommend pulling it from KWLS. This offers tab is really just, I cannot type and talk at the same time, but it's really just details of the contract. So once you are fully under contract, you're going to fill this out. So we'll say, oh, that's not what I want. There we go. So if you have any of these, you can input them. Agent analysis, so pros, cons, summary of the other agent. This is also something you can utilize if this is a listing and you want to review offers with your seller. You can input them all in here and it just gives you a good little list of the details of each offer. But as a buyer opportunity, you're only going to have one unless something terminates. But if this is the one we're going with, this is the one that's going to closing, we're going to hit accept. And then it gives you the option to manage commission. So coming in here, this is where you will fill out all of the details of your payment. I do have like a 5-minute YouTube video on obviously on our YouTube that just kind of goes over the different options of what can happen in this tab. So things like how to do a referral, how to do an agent split, how to pay Shauna if you're in the PC program. So definitely if those questions come up, that's a good video. But you just need to input your contract date. And then if this is, fill this out, add in whatever you need. You'll see over here what all you're paying in company dollar, royalty, other deductions, and then you'll hit submit. I'll give you a little hint. What happens when you hit submit is it comes to the front desk. We look at this sales price and we match it to what is on your contract. If it does not match, we send you a very kind reminder that you need to either upload an addendum or change the sales price in here. So that is the same day that you submit these documents. So the 48 hours after a signed contract. Some other little things in here. If you have a question and you need to message one of us, you do have this add comment button. So if we click that, it opens the chat box. Pay attention to this. I get command can be a pain sometimes, but half the time it does tell you what you're supposed to do. So use an @ symbol. So if you type in an @ it'll give you 4 options because I will also be on here. So, if you have maybe like a referral or a money related option or question and you need to message Valerie, you can choose her. Shauna, if you're in PC and you need her to look at something. Trisha, if you're not in PC and you need her to look at something. So you just select, it pops them up here, you type your message. We will do the same thing when messaging back to you. We'll do the @ and then the messages will show up. You'll get a little red dot in this notification center. You can click it. So you can see right now, mine just turned red. That was really weird. So when you have a notification, you'll have a red. If I click on it, you can see the message, all of that stuff. And then you click on it, it'll take you directly to the opportunity. It's just really important that you use that. Otherwise, if you just type a message, we're not going to know that you messaged us until we just kind of like randomly stumble into your opportunity and happen to look at the messages. So it could be, weeks before somebody gets back to you. And it's not because we're ignoring you. It's just because we have no idea that you messaged us.